Wonderful. So today we have Rebecca Johnson on our program. This is called the Champion Mindset, and she is a friend of mine now, but she used to be a physical therapist of mine, and she's wonderful at what she does and in understanding the body. And Rebecca, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell people what you've been up to and tell people what you've accomplished. And yeah, just let us know.
Okay. Well, hi. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. This is exciting. It's been probably about a 20-year history now of me just shaping and crafting what I do. I started off as an athletic trainer, and so that was pretty much on the field, just taking care of acute injuries. And then I progressed into becoming a physical therapist. And then as you learn more, you realize how much more there is to learn. And in order to really be good as far as I was concerned at what I did, I just had a huge curiosity to learn more. And within that, then you start to take more continuing education and you start to get more degrees, and you get more degrees because you understand the value of learning it to the depth of what you need to certify in something. And then when I realized that, well, then all of a sudden I just getting more degrees, more letters behind my name. But it wasn't so much that, was just the passion for learning, the passion for what else do I need to learn for my clients. And now I'm getting into cranial sacral therapy, and that is more tuning into listening to the body and understanding really what the body has to tell us on what it needs, versus me always looking at the body and saying, oh, that you need this, 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 and this. It's a piece of it, but there's more to it than just my own intellect. And it's really fascinating to see where I've been, even for myself, to see where I'm at now and how I treat my clients. It's quite fun.
That's a really interesting journey. Let me ask, with craniosacral therapy,
Mhm.
how do you pay more attention to what the body needs? I know that like you have a fine ear towards finding the missing parts. Whether
Mhm.
it be like helping to fix a person's gait, or
Mhm.
helping to improve. Pain management.
Mhm.
I know you're very talented at that, but how does one tune in to exactly the signals that the body is sending from your
Mhm.
point of view?
Mhm. So once you start down the road of, I'll say, even visceral therapy, which is the treatment of organs and the treatment of the craniosacral system, you are learning a completely different skill set, I'll say, for your tool belt. I've got all my manual therapy and my gait assessment and just range of motion and strength and all that. And then all of a sudden, there's this other section of the tool belt that one starts to have to tune into. So it's almost like different stations, right? You kind of turn the station, you want to listen to rock, you want to turn the station, you're listening to classical music. So what I've been taught and what I'm very thankful that I'm able to integrate is that when I actually watch someone's gait, I can see that their hip doesn't move the way that maybe the left one does. And then I go, okay, that's interesting. We test the strength. And then all of a sudden, all right, now the next step of the evaluation, again, are things that I've learned is that you can do a thermal assessment. So just like when you walk into the kitchen and you're like, ooh, something feels hot. Oh, someone left the burner on. The body can actually shed more heat on areas that need attention. So that is one way I listen to the body differently now than I used to. And then another way is it's called listening, but really what it is I'm placing my hand on where maybe if the client says they have discomfort, and the body will take you to what needs to be treated or what needs to be looked at, which is not very commonly heard about, but yet it is something that is a skilled set that you can learn. And that is primarily where I'm at now. So I think it's quite fascinating. The body just takes me on a journey during the day, and it's never is a half hour boring.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's almost like the body has two brains. One
Mhm.
is, in your skull, and the other one is of your actual physical body.
Mhm.
So that's interesting. It's almost like you became a professional investigator, like where you're
Mhm.
asking questions and then you're looking for the body or the patient to kind of lead you down the correct road, instead of
Mhm.
assuming, okay, the person has a tight hip. This is what should do. You, instead of having a plan, you let it flow naturally, which is amazing. I think that is the way that physical therapy should be done, and the direction that physical therapy is headed,
Mhm.
is being more attuned not only to what the patient says their complaints are, but to the way that a patient's body presents itself, and finding kind of a mesh in between, to really be able to cater your skill set to that patient's needs.
Mhm.
So let me ask, so I'm all about resiliency and understanding how do people bounce back, and how efficiently do people bounce back, and ways that we can incorporate resilient living into our lives.
Mhm.
If you're presented a patient with an acute injury, like a sprained ankle, for example, versus someone with chronic pain, uh, I know that your treatment plan obviously would be different, but my question is more centered around this idea that I believe to live a resilient life, to live a life where you are able to bounce back from setbacks, there
Mhm.
is something within you that has to be able to let go of trauma. uh,
Mm.
I believe that like you have to be able to accept, surrender, and process all of it in between, And so uh, I'm wondering, does the body do that? Like those with acute injuries, I know that process of surrender and acceptance and letting go, it looks significantly different than those with like chronic
Mhm.
illnesses. But I'm wondering, do you think that the body has some sort of like filtration system when it comes to processing trauma?
Mhm. I do. I do. I think that gets into a little bit more of an energetic talk because I think what is starting to become a little bit more well known is any restrictions in the body tend to be stored energy. Stored
Hmm.
energy can be from a mechanical injury or an emotional injury.
Hmm.
Either way, it's a holding pattern, and that holding pattern is a stored energy, and we just have to identify the source of that, like is it mechanical or emotional? And if it's emotional, well then when is that from? When, where, what, why? We ask all those questions. So when I am working with my client, we have our intellect, right? So I can see what I might want to work on. They have their intellect, they tell me, but yet, right? So now I'm starting to go more towards, well, what does the body have to tell me? And what within that, how much does the body trust me? How much does the body want to show me? And it might be different each session. So, does the body have the ability and the resilience to let go? Absolutely. I also have to provide a sacred space for that to happen, right? So, if I come in and I'm going to force the barrier, if you will, whether it's a tissue barrier or an emotional barrier, that patient is not going to be too excited to come back, or they just lay there and you can tell the body doesn't trust me, especially with certain areas. So you just kind of go, okay, well, can you feel the difference? Can you feel that your body doesn't want me to be treating your right shoulder, but it's okay if I'm over here by the left knee? And they're like, interestingly enough, I do sense that. And maybe it's because they've had a lot of clinicians work on that right shoulder and they're done. At a tissue level, those tissues are like, I don't even know this person. I don't even know who you brought me to. I don't want you to touch me
Yeah,
until
exactly.
I give you something that's easy. It's like almost the body tests me. How much do you know? How much are you here for the greater good? Oh, that's interesting. You did right by me today. Now I'll show you this. Interesting. You did right by me the last session too. Great. Now you can start to notice that the body's the body, the cell, the cellular structure starts to trust the clinician, and it's like, okay, I'm ready. Yeah, now let me show you this. Okay, cool. Let me show you this. Now I
Yeah.
need help here. And it's an evolving, it's an unwrapping of trust, of layers of restrictions. So is the body resilient and can it overcome things? Absolutely. And then within that, I'm probably not the only person on the team. It's myself. If we're dealing with someone with chronic pain and there's some emotional components to it, usually the same client has a counselor or a psychologist, a family counselor. Like, what else are they working with? Because sometimes chronic pain can be from the very first husband 20 years ago, right? Where, and that's when all the migraines started, but those tissues held a memory from that long ago because guess what? Their current son re- has some of the personality traits as their ex-husband, right? So
Yeah.
it's, yeah, well, that was 20 years ago. I said, but, and then there's a lot of dialogue there because the tissues are still holding something. I'm like, anyone in your circle of influence that still has the characteristics of your ex? And the patient might be like, oh my gosh, my son. Hmm. Right. So it's old chronic pain that's being stored in the body, but yet it kind of it gets festered.
Yeah.
So that's where you start to go, well, yes, it's an emotional restriction that over time lends itself to become a mechanical restriction. All of it can be cleared. Long
So do
story
you?
short.
Yeah, no, I get that, and you put it into context really well. So is it? Oh, you're almost like a counselor as well as a physical therapist in a way. If you Because the
Mhm.
mind and the body work so closely together and it's
Mhm.
all interconnected, uh, you find yourself at times being a counselor.
A counselor, I think would be along the line. I mean, am I hearing stories? Yes, but am I providing insight on what to do with that? No. My role is to bring it to the surface. My role is to identify what is this restriction really from, and then do you have someone on your team to work through that? Because if someone's coming to me with a physical restriction and we'll say it maybe it's from an emotional, but now it's a blended mechanical emotional restriction. If I continue to treat that and I get nowhere, or I think I just need to work harder to release that restriction, the patient's going to leave in more pain. We're not getting anywhere. And I'm sitting here going, what is this? Right. And
Yeah.
so over time, because people with chronic pain have been to pain clinics, they've been injected, they've been needled, they've looked for surgical consults, nothing really shows itself on any imaging. So what is this? And so then in my scope, I have so many questions to ask, and I'm asking the body, I'm not asking the patient's intellect.
Right.
And that's the difference. We're counseling, we're talking to each other's intellect. In the work that I do, thank you for sharing. I don't really care what your intellect has to tell me. I'm here to talk to your body
Right.
in
Yeah.
the nicest way
In the
possible.
nicest way possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes complete sense. There was something you said about trust that
Mhm.
resonated with me. I think energetically, we have to be aware of trust within our bodies as well. I know that personally, when I've gone through surgeries, at times I always think to myself, okay, am I going to be able to do, A, B, and C? And like I always like, or how am I going to be after this? And
Mhm.
so like, and that trauma gets to you as well. I was
Mhm.
talking to a friend recently that hurt her Achilles, and she was telling me, she doesn't know if she can trust herself to like run again. And
Mm.
so I
Mhm.
think the idea is to be aware of those emotions and to be in grand acceptance of them,
Uh-huh.
but also not to limit yourself. I think limit yourself as far as like, taking the doctor's advice or taking your advice, but healthy limits. I
Mhm.
think when you start to go into fear, you also start noticing that maybe restrictions start to increase. And
Mhm.
so, like with me, I've always been really in tune with how I am physically. And so after surgeries, when I would have those doubts creep in of like, okay, this has changed. I don't know if I'll be able to do this or this. I would always tell myself that, like, I'm still a participant in my own health, and I'm
Mhm.
still an active participant. And so I can't limit myself to that thinking. And
Mm.
so that's how I would push through it is, uh, I would think to myself, okay, I can't let myself beat me, And
Mhm.
so, yeah, the trust is a huge component that a lot of people don't talk about. But when you go through any sort of injury, that trauma can affect the relationship that you have with your body and the trust that coincides with that. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I completely agree. So, tell me about how do you uh, live resiliently? Like when things get you down, or when you go through
Mhm.
obstacles, how do you feel that you deal with them best?
Mhm. Uh, what I have found, I build up my support team as quickly as possible. What I see that I do with my clients, I also notice interesting. I do that for myself. So if a client comes to me and I might be their first resource of building, I'm like, who else is on your team? And they're like, I don't know, you're it. I haven't seen anybody in 10 years because I don't trust them. All
Right.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I go, "Oh, interesting. All right, well, let's start to build that up." So when I run into a situation, whether it's with the kids or myself or any of the above, I'm immediately looking for resources because I tend to not always trust. I mean, I only know so much. And so I sit there and I think, okay, I fall back on my own reasoning. And if I find that, okay, I feel like I need to learn something more on how to approach this differently. Okay, who are my resources? Do I text Farooq? Do I do I
Mm,
text Bob? Do
yeah.
I
I was gonna say Bob actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
Bob? Do I call or do I email a couple of my clients who I know that are in the business that I can reach out to with their expertise? Literally, I probably have honestly like pressed the button for Siri and said, okay, I need to research this. She's fascinating. She actually knows quite a bit. Um, I guess I look for resources and I look to help educate myself. That is what's always worked for me when I have clients where I might not have a good understanding of, okay, what's going on? What am I seeing? What do I need to know differently? I tend to approach that same way within my own life.
Yeah.
And it that has consistently worked well.
Yeah, I think that eventually, the more you incorporate it within your practice, it like seeps into every part of your life. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, absolutely, I completely agree with that. I na- I work a good amount with the senior community,
Mhm.
and what I've noticed is oftentimes like. They'll do the same thing. They'll seek out support systems that they can surround themselves with, that will help them on their bad days.
Mhm.
And they try to, find someone that will help them and encourage them to focus on the positive. And I think
Mhm.
part of active aging is knowing who you have around you,
Mhm.
and who can encourage you and who can help you uh, during those bad days. So
Mhm.
yeah, I completely
Yeah.
agree.
Who are your resources? Look around and you really want to get those in place so you know when you're having a tough day or a tough hour, all right, who's on my list
Yeah, exactly.
before you have it. So you
Yeah.
want to have a preparatory list before you have that bad day or bad season.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's it. I appreciate you joining. I thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I'll reach out more. But
Awesome.
thank you so much. And so yeah, I look forward to talking to you again in the future. All right. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Farooq.
All right.
Appreciate
Talk
it.
to you later. All
Okay.
right.
Bye bye.
Bye.